Welcome to an intimate conversation with women of color. How are you today, Griselda?
I am excited, especially to be invited into the ranks of such amazing women you've had as guests before. So I'm excited, nervous, and everything else in between.
Well, you know what? That's quite fine because we're having an intimate conversation, and that's what we're going to focus on. Just you and I kicking back like we do often. So,
Perfect. Works for me.
all right. So, today's guest is Griselda Garibay. Griselda is a multicultural, multilingual Latina executive with experience in startups, nonprofit management, and DEI. And for those that don't know, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. She recently completed a second master's degree in international public service. Wow. And from DePaul University, nonetheless. As the principal of Bayville Strategic Consulting, she supports small and mid-sized multicultural organizations assure sustainable business growth by embedding inclusion in their strategy. Griselda, tell us more about you.
Thank you, Deneen. Well, I'm an immigrant from Mexico, a first generation college graduate, very much a proud Mexican American. I am passionate about empowering others, and I'm a self professed nerd.
Okay. Well, that's new. Tell me about this nerd.
You know what? I really like education. And like the previous podcast, I was listening to it. And although I definitely don't have a PhD, nor will I pursue that, I've always found education to be where I got my confidence, where it validated my purpose in life. And I've always excelled. So that's how I received the right kind of attention. And so yeah, my family asked me, so are you going to do anything else? And I'm like, no. But they'll also ask, why did you have to? And I say, because it really feeds my soul. I love structured learning, and I just need it.
Yeah, and you know what? That makes sense. And that actually kind of speaks to how we met. So we met in an environment where you were leading a program, right? You were the director of the programs, and so that all ties in, and I get it. And then by having a second master's, that speaks to your nerdiness as far as with education. And so when you mentioned the previous guest, I thought about TD Mentor, who she's in counseling, and I mean she had about 5 degrees, and at the time, and that may be who you're thinking of, but at the time she was working on a PhD. So it's like, wow, you really like learning, right?
Definitely. And yeah, I think we think of nerd as a bad word, especially growing up because of the stigma that no one wants to be, too smart.
Right.
But you know what? Yeah, I guess to those people that thought I was a nerd growing up, I mean, who's laughing now?
Right.
I like where I've been, where I've gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's a great thing. Education is key. I mean, we have to be educated in order to make things happen. So, no, good for you.
Especially girls.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which takes us into, part of our discussion. And you and I, we're friends. So we have conversations. We've had multiple conversations. You are a great supporter of the podcast, the Facebook group. You keep us focused on self-care on Sundays. I greatly appreciate you and all the connections and everything that you bring. Why is it important for Latinas, for women of color, to have a platform to use their voices?
Well, I got to tell you that I'm so happy that you allowed me to be involved in this journey with you because it was the first time that I actually knew someone that was providing a platform. And it was someone that I knew. It wasn't someone that I read about. It wasn't a blogger, separated by 6-7 degrees. And so I was like, I need to continue. I need to be part of this wherever it goes. I need to support it. So it's really been my pleasure. And to address your question, why is it important for Latinas and women of color to use our voices? When I think of women, as human beings, we all have something very unique and important that we can contribute to this world. And specifically thinking of women as we're celebrating Black History Month, I recently learned about, and hopefully I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Sojourner Truth.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with her? Did I say it right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
So she's the first African-American suffragist and a champion of women's rights. And then something closer to someone I've actually met, when I think of Dolores Huerta, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting a couple of years ago. She's an amazing Mexican-American labor leader and a civil rights activist, and very much active even now as she's in her 90s. And then if I even look closer, as I think of my own mother, she is the middle child of a struggling farmer and a housewife in rural Durango, Mexico. My grandparents had 9 kids. The oldest one was a boy. 8 girls followed.
Wow.
Which is not exactly the best kind of luck if you're a farmer, just not so much. But I remember my mom telling me as I've, grown up, that my grandmother, who had a 2nd grade education, if that, and I say this because it's not exactly nice what I'm going to say, but it gives you context. So my grandmother would tell my aunts, yo daría todos ustedes por él. I would give up all of you girls for him, or my uncle. So you talk about having a platform. My mom didn't have a voice, much less a platform in which to make that come to life. And this is why, as a young unwed mother, she made sure that I would have far more opportunities than were ever even possible for her. And is the reason why, she brought me to the US at the age of 12. And now I have a 12-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl. And both my husband and I are very purposeful in reminding them that it is their duty to surpass both our accomplishments, that we need to evolve from what we've been, struggles and joys, to what we can be. Because I particularly feel that it is by acknowledging the voices of those that came before us, like Sojourner, like Dolores, people that have sacrificed and faced adversity, that we actually honor ourselves.
Yes, I love that. We honor ourselves when we honor what our ancestors, fought for, what they sacrificed for. And that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I know that you use your voice in many different ways, right? Again, you've used it. You're such a champion of the Intimate Conversation with Women of Color podcast, such a champion. You use your voice there to connect me with other women. Several of my guests have been friends of yours. so thank you. And shout out to a couple, Angelique and Sheila. Thank you so much. And as I said, you keep us focused on being our best selves by taking time for ourselves. That's our focus on Sunday. But how else are you using your voice for Latinas and other women of color?
As I mentioned, I'm a first generation college grad. And are you? Or you? What generation college grad are you?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the stories, there's some similarity, but at least for me, I had little to no guidance. I literally went to the university because the bus took me there. It was 4 blocks from my house. And as a Latina, when that entails being, I'm an only child, a woman, Hispanic, there's no way that I was ever going to go anywhere where my parents couldn't get a hold of me, right? So therefore I went to that. And because of this, because I didn't have any assistance in discerning between a career and a job, which is really important as you're starting to work, I consciously seek opportunities to encourage and advise other young and up and coming women of color, both in my personal and professional life. So that's something that I've been doing since forever, because I would want them to achieve and surpass my level of success, but to do it faster so that they can learn from my mistakes. Did you have a similar experience?
You know what? Honestly, for me, it was just a continuation of what what I was going through. I did when I left high school, I was focused on social work because I cared about other people, but just differently, right? Because I'm not a first generation, right? I'm not an immigrant. So it was just, just the norm. I went to an all girls Catholic school, and, the expectation kind of was you go on to college. So no, it was a different experience. It was different. And so later in life, I really tapped into my love of people. And so that kind of builds where I am today.
So you mentioned high school, and so I went to Kenwood here in Chicago, which is, at that time, and I believe now it's back on as one of the top 3 public high schools in Chicago. And I had a 3.7. I'm really proud of my 3.7 because I'd only been in the US for like 5 years.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Right. And no one spoke to me about going to college.
Mm.
I was already taking AP classes and no one spoke to me. And part of that is that I understand the public system is overwhelmed, and there's probably one counselor per 100. But looking back, as an adult, I can see that they saw a brown, chubby girl at that point that was probably going to be pregnant by the summer. So why talk to her about college? If I was a struggling student, even that is not a reason for it. But I had a 3.7 out of 4.
Yeah, that should have did it right there. That should have indicated that, okay, this person is capable of so much and she wants it. Yeah,
So
that's
I wanted to add other things because you mentioned Angelique, and so I recently joined the Cafe Ama board as a chair, and I was so happy that you like the coffee from Cafe Ama. Angelique, as you know, is the president and founder of Friends of Puerto Rico, and I'm really excited about collaborating with them because 100% of all the proceeds from the sale of coffee go to empower young women and girls to be entrepreneurial. So there's no dependency on an outside force, and they really become, self-reliant.
Yes. And when she shared about that mission and what they were doing, I thought it was amazing. She talked about the young girls and how they were prepared. I think they were going to do something like on television, something of that nature, but just that they were prepared and they were ready. And the work that, her mission, everything behind that, I just thought it was absolutely amazing and needed, right? Being an entrepreneur, you don't have to rely on anyone. And last week's guest, Arlen Hamilton, she's a venture capitalist, and what she says, and she actually recommends that people, when you go into business, bootstrap, right? So that you don't own anything to anybody else, which is kind of what you said. The whole purpose of going into business for yourself is that you control it, right?
Exactly.
You're in control of those things for yourself. And so a way of doing that is financing it, figuring out how to finance it on your own. So yeah.
And people ask me, so why would you want to help me? For example, the women that I've been mentoring, some of them as long as 15 years. And I tell them half jokingly, but also half truth, is that I'm doing it for selfish purposes because I have 2 girls and I want them to be my daughter's mentors when they are in a need, in a way that I didn't have someone. So it's about giving it back. And you can see, from really being attracted to what you're doing, to Angelique and others, I like to hang out around amazing women.
Oh.
So.
Oh, and what you're doing for your daughters, you're leading by example. You're showing them you're that representation, because we need to see, right, people who look like us doing those things. And that lets us know that, oh, I can do that as well. And so those are some things that I think about when I'm like, oh, should I do this? Should I keep going with something? I think about, I'm not doing it for myself. Or again, I'm doing it, for you, you're selfish for your daughters. And for me, it's for my son, because I share with him like the journey, like, I want this is a goal I have. And these are the things that I'm doing to get there. And I'm telling him to make him a part of it, but also to show him, teach him, and demonstrate that he can do it as well. And that you do need to put in, some effort to get those things that you want. Now, you don't necessarily, sometimes you have to work really, really hard, but the key is that you have to take a step, right, on that journey, on that walk that you're on, to get those things that you want.
And you really don't want the easy things because you tend to not value the things that come easily. So
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely. And that's a conversation that I've had this week, is that for me, all of this has been a journey, and I recognize it as such, and I'm fine with it because I'm able to be that example for somebody. I'm able to share, well, this is what I did to get to that place, right? It didn't just happen for me, because what is the message in that? Right? If you just wake up and you accomplish whatever that one thing is that you wanted, I can't teach you how to do that, right?
exactly.
But when
Yeah.
you go through the journey, the steps and the process, and you're having to do this and then and build off of it, I'm able to say to you, Griselda, I'm able to say to your daughters, I'm able to say to our listeners, these are the things that I did to get to this point right now, and here's what I'm doing to get to that next point, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I would also add that, I was mentioning this to a friend yesterday, that when we're younger, when I remember being in my 20s and thinking that career and life was going to be linear. But sometimes what you're showing your son is that you may take two steps forward and sometimes you take a step back.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's okay.
Hmm.
It is actually perfectly okay.
It is. It's part of the journey. It's something for you to learn. You pick something up, right? And it's up to you what you do with that, right? So it's up to you to recognize that, oh, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be at this moment. Okay, cool, but I'm going to keep it moving, right? Because I'm still trying to get over there, right? And so it's okay. I'm supposed to be here for whatever reason to get there. I mean, and even for me, born and raised in Detroit, moved to Las Vegas, which is where I learned my purpose and passion. Moved back, was home for like 3 years before I even got into what I'm doing now, or at least what I was doing up until the end of last year. And the way that I described the diversity and inclusion work that I was doing was that it was my purpose and passion. I was being paid to passionately pursue my purpose. But
Right.
again, I went to Vegas to learn what it was, came back, and then, had a career in it for 5 years. And now I'm at the next stage of it. I'm on the talent development side, and it's just a growth, right? But I had to go there to come back to get this thing.
Well, and congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. And so, I don't think you were this person when you were younger, maybe, maybe not, but there are a lot of women, there are a lot of Latinas who don't recognize the power of their voice. And their voice could be speaking, it could be um creatively, right? So it could be writing, it could be acting, etc., whatever it is. But what would you tell those who don't yet recognize the power of their voices?
I like sayings a lot. And there's one of my most favorite sayings that I heard growing up in Mexico was, El que no habla, Dios no lo oye. So, which means he, or in this case, she, who doesn't speak, God does not hear.
Mm,
So, and I think as women, we're generally outward focused, and we're focused and giving to others and empowering others. But it's really critical, and I'm learning this as I'm getting older, that we need to remember, not only am I going to mentor and be an example for someone else, I need to listen. I need to be my own best friend and speak, and request and demand the things that we desire, the things that we know we've earned and that we deserve. So I would say to those women, ask for that promotion, ask to lead that project, ask and request a development program that is going to take you to the next level in this career or next, anything that you might be later. But most of all, to say it out loud. I said right before you asked me, because our conversation was supposed to take place in April, and I've started saying as I walk my dogs. Yes, after our conversation between you and I'm walking my dogs, and I've started saying, I welcome abundance,
mm,
and I welcome peace.
yes.
And then you send me a message, and I was like, okay, I said I welcome abundance. She's giving me a platform. Let's do this. So even if you have that self-doubt, and I know it's easier said than done, even if you have those butterflies that are just totally killing your stomach, you've got to speak up, because you might just be surprised of what happens.
Absolutely. And honestly, the role that I have now, I spoke up. I actually had asked to be a part of the program. And fast forward, instead of being a part of the program, I'm leading the program. So look at that.
You put it out into the universe, you know?
Right? I put it out there.
Definitely. You know, one thing I wanted to add as well, because this is now going to be my mantra for 2021, and is grace does not negate growth.
Mm.
So grace does not negate growth. And I've had to learn, especially this past year, about giving grace to myself, which I think as women, again, we set this extremely high benchmarks to meet. And if we don't meet them, that is a failure.
Yeah.
So I think we need to recognize that before we giving grace to others, we need to give it to ourselves. But at the same time, knowing that this doesn't mean that you remain stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
So complacency leads to mediocrity. And we always have to be pushing and expanding that comfort zone at the same time that we give ourselves grace. So that's my goal for this year.
And you know what? So when you said that, that really spoke to me. And I'm a little teary eyed because I had to give myself grace around grieving. And, and that kind of leads into the next thing that I want to bring up. But I had to realize that I don't grieve the same way as other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
It's your grief. It's no one else's grief.
No, it's mine. It's mine. And so, however I do grieve, it's okay. And I had to give myself grace because I was hard on myself that I'm not, as outward as other people are with it. Right. So losing my sister. And I don't know that you know this because I really didn't share, but in January, I lost my aunt as well. So that's within a few months that I lost two very close people. And I'm like, man, I'm not like bawling, but I don't bawl. That's not how I grieve. And I had to be okay with that's not how I grieve and to, just really focus on what I do and how I get it out. And so one of the ways that I did, and this is even before I came to this realization and gave myself grace, but, to honor my sister, Soul True, who wrote the book Dreams Deferred, I started thinking like, what dreams am I deferring, right? Is there something that I'm delaying for whatever reason? And then I wanted to extend that to other people. I wanted other people to start thinking about that. Like, what is that thing that you wanted to do that you put on hold, right? And so for you, is there anything that you've deferred? And if so, what have you done and or what are you doing?
That is one of those deep questions that, and I can see why people don't think about it often because it bears your soul, right? It's asking you to just be naked in front of yourself. So I thought about this and I think it's been more of a redirection than a deferment. So I mentioned I came to the US when I was 12 and I'm a nerd, but I'm the kind of nerd that was really fascinated with languages as a result of having to learn English. So in high school, I was the kid that was taking English with support because my vocabulary was limited, but I was also taking French, Italian, and AP Spanish literature all at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, I could have finished high school in 3 years.
Oh my.
So all this to say, really my passion for languages is beyond just the language itself. Is with the culture, the food, the connection with different people that encompasses, that it allows me as a bridge to all those other experiences. And this is what led me to pursue my first master's in international business at DePaul, my MBA, because I wanted to go work for the United Nations Development Program, which I don't know if you know, it's the project management arm of the United Nations. And so they focus on eradicating poverty and encouraging sustainability and equity. So as part of the program, I was able to travel to the United Nations to attend an NGO conference. And I secured an interview with the administrator of the UNDP. And we met on September 10th, 2001. And the conversation went very well. There seemed to be opportunities for me to go to Amman, Jordan. Mm. And so we left it at that as an initial conversation to continue in the coming days. And the next day, right before the conference started, as we all know, the World Trade Center was attacked. So the UN immediately halted any travel for American citizens where they may be in potential areas of conflict. I mean, it took me 5 days to get back home from Chicago, from New York in that year. So all this to say, looking back, now 20 years since I went to that conference with that goal in mind, I didn't end up working for the UN, and living abroad was my goal, my desire as a, motherless, single girl. But I have had the chance since then to be engaged in projects that have been really close to my heart. And one of them has been working for the Vincentian Family Haiti Initiative for about 5 years. And the purpose of that was to create opportunities for Haitians living in poverty through social business enterprises, through microfinance, a tilapia fish farm, and other things like that. So now as I'm looking at, I'm hitting a milestone at the end of this year, I'll be 50, even though I feel like I'm 35. So I'm banking on that. And this redirection has allowed me to focus on what I know really nurtures both my intellect and my heart. And that is, as you mentioned, a consulting firm that really partners with entities that value social justice, that see it as a coexistence between business and mission. So therefore, the MBA in International Business and the Master's in International Public Service, because I want sustainability for these entities, whether it be nonprofit or corporate, but it has to be impactful. So I'm redirecting my semi-deferred dream.
Now, were you going to have to learn Arabic or another language if you would have taken that assignment?
Yes, and I welcomed it. I actually, when I was in college, I wanted to, so I went to Canada because I was going to be an engineer, and I took physics, and it totally killed me. I would leave that room and be like, what were they talking about? Because I have no clue. So I went to Canada, and after 3 weeks, it was a 6-week program. It was an immersion program. I called my mom and said, so now this is my first time, Deneen, leaving the house. I'm 20 years old, Hispanic, female. And I called and I announced to her that I would be staying for the year. You know what she said? Can I come live with you? And I said, no, you have a husband. You may not come live with me. I want to grow. I want to learn how to iron my own clothes, because as an only child, everything was done for me.
Yeah.
I mentioned this because upon returning, I had that bug of languages, and I wanted to go to Brazil and learn Portuguese. So I may still work with our friend Sheila, because languages are very much at the core of me.
And I think that's the only way I'm really going to learn Spanish, is to immerse myself, is, go somewhere, like, just drop me off somewhere, and that's the only way. Because I tell folks, oh yeah, I've been in Spanish 101 for years. And right now I'm working with Duolingo, but I know for me, I'm going to have to be immersed into it. And I have plenty of people that I can speak with, which is important for me. However, I don't have that confidence. I don't have that confidence level to actually have a conversation. So for me, I want, just drop me there, and then, kind of pick up that way. So at some point when I'm comfortable with traveling again, I may spend a little bit, extra time somewhere.
Oh, we can talk. There's some amazing places if you're thinking of, for example, in Mexico, Querétaro, which is in the middle of the country, is one of the safest and is recognized as one of the safest areas in the nation. Yeah. And it's from the 16th century architecture. So it's quaint, it's small. If you go there for 6 weeks, yes, you'll come back and totally surprise everyone.
Oh my God. Okay. So I have to remember that. You have to remind me, just check in with me every now and then.
I'll hold you to that.
Yes, please. So
accountability.
I would love that. So as we are wrapping up, when we were talking, this one conversation, and you started telling me about your love story, and I'm like, oh my God, hold that. Let's get you on a podcast, right? And so, and it was supposed to be in April, but moved you up to February, which it fit. But before I
Perfect.
ask you about your love story, again, it's February, which is Black History Month. You already mentioned that. Is as well. We just celebrated Valentine's Day. What epitomizes Black love for you?
So well, Rosa Parks,
Okay.
because she had love for herself, because she valued herself more so than anyone else did. And she was able to fight for her own, not integrity, but for her worth,
Mm.
for her humanity. So I hope my girls are half as brave as she was.
Wow, that's nice. That's nice. Thank you so much for that. So your husband is French, right?
No, he just has a French sounding last name, which we actually, I gave him for Christmas, the 23andMe. Have you done that?
No.
No. So we're doing that. His last name is Sobrevilla, which is actually Sobreville. It's Spanish and French, but he's very Mexican. Although people tell me that I'm married to either an Italian or Greek man, because he doesn't follow the stereotype. So he's 6 feet tall. He's 150 pounds. Yeah, I know. He's got an extremely high metabolism, which I'm not very happy with, because I'm close to that and I'm not 6 feet tall. But he has dark hair and the longest eyelashes you've ever seen. But he's also very, very light. So yeah, people confuse him. Yeah, anything
Got
but
it.
it.
Got it. So that may have been what you mentioned. But tell me about your love story. So like I said, we started having that conversation. I'm like, put that on pause, and now here we're gonna have it today. So tell me about your love story.
So my love story was completely unexpected. We met at 15, and I used to go to high school with his brother, who was in 7th grade. And because we went to Kenora, we lived really far away, we rode the bus together. So, every other day it seemed like the bus forgot to pick us up.
Oh
So
no.
his brother and I would go back to his house, so his dad would take us to school. And this happened so much that I got to know him. So when it came time to prom, he's 6 months younger than me, so he was a junior. He was utterly excited to be going to prom with me as friends, but as a junior, going to a senior prom, and nothing really happened. I was awkward. I was not gonna, look at anything else other than school. But it happened that now at 21, we ran into each other by chance, because his brother and I, once again, were going to the same university. So we dated briefly for about 3 months, but he was 21 as a male. It's more like he was 16, right? Girl. Let's be real here. And I told him, you know what? After 3 months, I said, you're going to break my heart. And I've been there before, and I'm going to fall in love with you, and you're not. So we're going to have to just stop. And so we did. We went our separate ways. And then I'm now 30 years old. So 9 years later, and I'm working downtown. And this morning, I don't know, I used to go to the right because there were two entrances to work. And this time I decided to go to the left. And I'm walking towards the door, and I see this, tall, thin guy coming at me that looks kind of familiar. And I had just ended a long-term relationship the week before. And he smiled at me, and we've always had this great chemistry. So it was like 9 days had passed since we had last seen each other. So he asked me to the movies. And that was 19 years ago. 2 kids, and he's the best partner I never thought I would have wanted to have.
Aw, that is so sweet. That's so sweet. Yeah, seeing your pictures, you can see the love, right? And with the family, and then with the dogs that you have at the time, it's all beautiful. And I thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking about it. Sunday, we're having a conversation. So, Monique has put together an event for us to have a conversation on dating. So you're well beyond that, right? You have a beautiful love story, and we can kind of talk about that. But I love that, right? Even though it was 19 years ago, it still gives you hope, right? That it can happen for you by going to the left.
Exactly. It
Changing
was
up, doing something differently than, what you've done before. And that's what it takes, right? So whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about, going for goals, sometimes you just have to do something different than you've been doing.
absolutely. And I think, I don't have a fairy tale life, and that relationships are hard and it really takes work, but then so does your career.
Yeah.
So you've got to take a chance and work for what you want, for what really feeds that soul and that intellect.
Yes.
So
Yes. I like going back to that, feeding that soul. So, Griselda, I thank you so much for your time. But before we wrap up, is there anything you want to leave our guests with?
I do. I've listened pretty much to every single one, and you always have such wise women. So I'm hoping that this would, fall somewhere within that same realm. So I was thinking about the audience and letting them know that our accomplishments as individual women might not all make the history books like the women that I mentioned before, but they matter just the same. Because every day, after all, we're writing our own stories.
Yeah.
And the stories of our families. So I thank you, Deneen, for being part of an initiative that celebrates singular voices. I can't wait to see where you go from here, because I'll be right there next to you.
Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you will be. And I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Griselda. I loved it. I mean, from your journey, right? Because you're on a continual journey. It's just,
Absolutely.
different paths and different parts of it that make you who you are. So I appreciate who you are. And I thank you so much for being there with me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Same to you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.